On this 26th Sunday of Ordinary Time, there are a lot of things going on in this Gospel of the rich man and Lazarus. One of the things about it is that you have Jesus addressing the parable of the rich man and Lazarus to the Pharisees. And one of the problems with a society is that any society that idolizes a particular group or a particular people, they're going to sometimes be in a lot of trouble. So it's kind of think about society today. You have the musicians, the athletes, and certainly some of them are really good as far as using their fame to spread various good causes and to do a lot for the community, but some kind of take advantage. And the same can be said with the Pharisees. The Pharisees, some of them certainly were very good and very holy people, but some used to their advantage. So they wanted the greetings in the marketplaces. They wanted, the best seats. So if the Pharisees were today, they would want the club level suite, to be up there hobnobbing in that area. So that's what Jesus addresses it to. And then you have the rich man who's not named. They call him Dives, but Dives, all it means is Latin for rich, so he's unnamed. But Lazarus, who is the poor man, he's the one who is named. And so it's again that idea in the Gospel of Luke that the last will be first, the first will be last. The one who was the rich man, who you would assume would be named, was the one who was unnamed, but yet Lazarus, the poor man, was the one who was named. Again, it's not that the rich man did anything particularly evil to Lazarus. It's not that he had him arrested or he had him, the dogs go out and chase him away or, do something mean or nasty or evil to Lazarus. But what he was kind of indifferent, just kind of stepping over Lazarus as he went about his daily task. Never really thought about him. And so he had that kind of a bland kind of indifference to his plight. And so then the rich man dies, Lazarus dies, and then they have this role reversal. So the rich man cries out, he says, Abraham, have pity on me, send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water to cool my tongue, for I'm suffering and torments in these flames. So he's still kind of barking orders, Abraham, have Lazarus do this for me. And then the other thing is that he has, in a way, a kind of repentance. He says, I beg you, Father, to warn my brothers lest they come to this place of torment. The one thing that's interesting about repentance is that sometimes you can have repentance that's a true repentance. You can have a repentance that, that you've done something or that you're sorry, that you have true contrition for it. Sometimes you can have repentance that says, I was caught, so therefore, I'm repenting. You can have guys who are, in prison and they're in the police station being interrogated, and they have these tears and copious tears. But yet it's not because they're really truly sorry for what they've done. They're just sorry that they got caught, and that they're looking at, many years in prison. And that's why they have that. So you can say that the rich man had this kind of a contrition, but really much more for the contrition of being caught than contrition for the plight of Lazarus and what he did to the indifference that he had to Lazarus. He says, if somebody comes back from the dead and warns them, they'll understand that. And Abraham says they have Moses and the prophets, and if they don't listen to them, they shouldn't be persuaded if someone should rise from the dead. When we think about that as Jesus himself, it certainly, the people, we want to think about the fact that, if we were, with Jesus in the crowd, we certainly would have a much stronger faith, or we'd have a much stronger, Christianity if we were just there at the time of Jesus. But really, when we think about it, the people had to see with the eyes of faith. They had to see with their eyes of um, of faith in that what Jesus was doing. And so many people heard his miracles, and yet really, were indifferent to it. Some certainly did follow, especially the ones from the Galilee. They certainly followed him. But many of the people in Jerusalem were skeptical, to say the least. And then, they were the ones who were easily changed into crucify him. So you had those. You had the ones who were who just kind of blandly took offense and walked away. You had the ones who thought that Jesus was doing the miracles by his by the prince of demons. And so you had all these kind of things. And so what does this gospel really kind of say to us? And I think one of the things is that it's kind of that warning against indifference. It's that warning against, that just seeing things the way they are and not really using our position, not really using our authority, not using the blessings that God has given us to help and to serve others, but just kind of being different and just kind of thinking about ourselves. And so one of the things that we can do is that if we maybe not want to give, money to somebody on the street because they'll use it for various purposes. And, sometimes, I've had a situation at my former parish where there were a couple of people, who were clearly living on the street in that area, but yet they didn't really want any help and refused help. So what do you do in those kind of situations? I think one of the things you can do is certainly help out with organizations that that serve, whether it be in food pantries, whether it be in helping out with organizations to help the homeless, because again, sometimes people, because of their illness, because of their addiction, just because they just don't want to live a lifestyle with anyone telling them what to do, they are there on the street. But there are many who do wish to come off the street or come off their addiction or to change. And so there are organizations that certainly are a blessing to them that help them to change. So really that idea of going against indifference and really thinking about the people, the organizations that help those in need and to help them as well and be a blessing to them. Thanks and God bless.